There are few sounds that can slice through the calm of dawn like a blade, and that morning, the sound was a gunshot. Sharp, metallic, and echoing across my ranch as if the land itself had screamed. I hadn't even opened my eyes before my heart started sprinting. In that split second between sleep and panic, a dozen wild possibilities hit me: coyotes? Poachers? Some fool testing target practice? Or worse, Titan. Titan. My prized bull. My partner, not just another animal. The sound had come from the south pasture, and that was where he liked to roam at sunrise. My gut twisted. I kicked free of the sheets, stumbled into jeans and boots, and lunged to the window. The world outside looked innocent for half a heartbeat, mist stretching across fields, light breaking over the fences, until I saw them. Strangers. Men in camouflage, rifles slung lazy over their shoulders like this was some public hunting reserve. They were cutting straight across my property, confident as kings. A curse flew out of me so loud I'm surprised it didn't crack the window. This was private land. My land. 2 days earlier, I wouldn't have believed this seemed possible. But if you'd asked who could stir trouble faster than a fox in a henhouse, I'd have said one name without hesitation: Karen. Karen, the self-crowned queen of the neighborhood HOA, a woman who treated bylaws like holy scripture and her clipboard like a sword. She had no authority out here. My ranch wasn't under her jurisdiction a day in its life. But that never stopped Karen from pretending she ruled everything her eyes touched. She hated my barns, my livestock, even the way my grass grew, as if Mother Nature herself had to answer to her rules. To hear her talk, you'd think I ran a landfill of chaos instead of a third-generation ranch built on sweat and respect. And now, strange hunters on my land. My pulse hammered. This had her fingerprints all over it. Hey, before we ride any further into this storm of chaos, thank you. Really. These stories take heart to tell, and it means a lot that you're here with me. If you're the kind who stands for fairness, loyalty, and seeing justice done, hit that like button and subscribe. It helps this ranch of a channel grow, and keep stories like this one alive. Now, back to the madness that started it all. Titan, he wasn't just livestock, he was legacy. The kind of bull that made children point and old ranchers nod with quiet respect. Glossy black coat, eyes dark as river stones, and a calm authority that no creature, man or beast, could fake. He was my family's pride, my daily ritual, my oldest friend. Every morning, he'd meet me at the fence, waiting for his scratch behind the ears. The big guy loved that. Some mornings, we didn't need words, just the soft huff of his breath and the comfort of routine. The day before those gunshots, something had already felt off. Near the south fence, fresh tire tracks carved deep ruts into the mud. Big, wide treads, ATV maybe. Not mine. Not Joe's either, and Joe was my closest neighbor, the kind who noticed stray tracks before even the tumbleweeds did. I had asked him about it that afternoon. Joe chuckled, wiping grease off his hands, and said, "Heard Karen big talkin' at the HOA meeting. Claimed she'd fix the ranch problem once and for all." I'd laughed it off then. Karen talked plenty, did little. But now, as I stared at those armed intruders crossing my fields, every joke vanished from my mind like smoke. I grabbed my shotgun, not to start a fight, but to remind these strangers whose land they were walking on. My boots pounded against the dirt, matching the rhythm of my pulse. "Hey!" I shouted across the field, voice cutting through the morning air. "You're trespassing." They looked up, but instead of guilt, I saw smirks. One even tipped his cap. "Relax, bud. We got permission." Permission? My rage boiled like iron in the forge. Permission, from who? The HOA lady, the tall one, said casually. "Karen. Said we could hunt out here. Said the owner was fine with it." In that instant, the world tilted. Karen's arrogance had finally crawled past gossip and into danger. I pointed at the red-lettered sign on my fence, "No trespassing." The heavy-set man looked uneasy. The tall one didn't. He raised his rifle. My breath froze. I followed his gaze, and that's when I saw Titan. Titan stood proud on the ridge, head high, sunlight glinting off his black coat. He was curious, calm, and utterly unaware of the danger staring him down. No. I screamed, lungs tearing, but the shot cracked anyway. A thunderclap of death. Titan buckled as if the earth had pulled him down. His body lurched, then crumpled into the grass with a sound I'll never forget, a heavy, final thud that split my heart clean open. Everything else blurred. Shotgun fell from my hands. The world narrowed to Titan, lying there, dust swirling around him, blood blooming into the morning soil. I hit the ground beside him, knees sinking into mud. My palms pressed against the wound, useless as prayers. Tears streaked through dust on my face. "Hold on, boy. Hold on." The hunters shifted behind me. Their boots crunched the grass. One muttered, "Clean kill. Legal season." I whipped around, fury roaring in my chest. "There is no season here. This is private land, my land, and you just shot my prize bull." The tall one dropped his smirk. Even he could taste the disaster now. My trembling fingers fumbled for my phone. Vet first. Then sheriff. Words tangled with rage and panic. I barely managed to form sentences. Animal down. Need immediate help. Trespassers with rifles. Sirens hadn't even started yet when dust clouded the edge of my driveway, and there she was. Karen. Hair perfect. White SUV gleaming. Clipboard in hand like she was about to inspect fence paint instead of a crime scene. "What's all this racket?" she called, voice sweet but dripping with smugness. I could barely see straight. "You did this," I said, every word a growl. "They shot Titan because of you." Karen blinked behind her sunglasses, pretending innocence she didn't have in her bones. Titan groaned behind me, the sound low and weak. I pressed my hand to his shoulder, promising through gritted teeth, "Hang on, big guy. I'll make this right." Under the scream of approaching sirens, I made another promise silently but just as fierce. Karen was about to learn what happens when you cross a rancher. Sirens grew louder, cutting through the fields like warning bells from some frontier church. Sheriff's cruisers tore into the drive, tires spitting gravel. Deputy Miller jumped out first. The kid looked barely 30, but his hand hovered near his holster when he saw rifles and blood. "There they are." I barked, pointing toward the hunters clustered awkwardly by the fence. "Trespassing. Illegal hunting. Shot my prize bull." The deputy's face hardened. He approached them, taking statements, his notebook flashing sunlight. The fat one stumbled over excuses, while the tall one stood silent, jaw clenched. Then Karen sauntered in, high heels clicking through the dirt, clipboard pressed tight like a badge. "Officer," she chimed, "these men were simply enjoying a lawful community-approved hunt." "Approved by who?" I snapped. She gave me that smile, sharp as barbed wire. "By me. I'm the HOA president." Deputy Miller arched a brow, uncertain who was crazier. "Ma'am, this property listed under your HOA?" "No," I said, already pulling my phone. "And here's county proof." I opened archived land maps, official as sunrise. The deputy took one look and nodded slow. Karen's face flushed the color of overripe tomatoes. She started to argue, spitting legal buzzwords like seeds, but the deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, unless you have authority over this land, you're interfering with private property rights. That's illegal." The hunters shuffled, their bravado evaporated. One finally held out a wrinkled paper, a permit, stamped with the HOA logo and Karen's curly signature. Miller frowned. This real? The fat man pointed at Karen. She gave it to us. Said we were helpin' control hogs and deer. I swore under my breath. She couldn't tell a deer print from a tractor tire. The deputy called his superior. Within minutes, Sheriff Danvers arrived, gray-haired, stone-jawed, and visibly unimpressed. He looked over the mess, Titan bleeding, Hunter's pale, Karen fuming, and sighed. Well, he said, we've got falsified documents, trespass, animal injury, possibly forgery. Karen blanched. The color drained from her arrogance. The sheriff turned to me. Doc's on his way for your bull. We'll handle the rest. As they cuffed Karen, dust swirling in the flashing lights, I knelt beside Titan again. His breath came weaker now, but still there. I whispered, hang tight, old friend. Doc Harris arrived in a whirlwind of dust and barking orders, his old pickup coughing like a lifelong smoker. He hopped out before the engine stopped, medical bag swinging from one shoulder, eyes already scanning Titan's massive body. What the devil happened here? He growled. Idiots with rifles, I said. Courtesy of the HOA queen herself. Doc crouched beside Titan, pressed a stethoscope to the bull's chest, and nodded sharply to his assistant. We've got a fighting chance if we move quick. Gauze, antiseptic, formalin, it all blurred together as he patched what he could right there in the field. Titan's side heaved, his breath wet and shallow, but not gone. Meanwhile, Sheriff Danvers took over from his deputy, voice low but commanding. Ma'am, he said to Karen, you're looking at forged documents, trespassing, and just plain stupidity. Karen sputtered, this is outrageous. I was aiding the community. Danvers shook his head. You aided a felony. With that, he read her rights while the hunters stood frozen, rifles confiscated, faces pale. I should have felt triumphant then, but I didn't. All I heard was Titan's ragged breathing. As Doc loaded him onto a trailer, I followed close, hand resting on his flank. Stay with me, big guy, I whispered. You're tougher than this. Karen shrieked something about lawsuits while she was led toward the cruiser. Her protest died when the door slammed shut. The siren started again, fading into the horizon. All that remained was silence and churned up dirt, except for Joe's truck pulling in, the man stepping out slow, hat in hand. Heard the whole mess on the scanner, he said gently. You need anything? I glanced toward the streak of blood across the grass, my heart clenching. Yeah, I said. Justice. Joe nodded once. Then justice you'll get. The wind whipped through the pasture, tugging at the no trespassing sign that Karen had chosen to ignore. I tightened the wire on that fence myself before following Doc's taillights to town. Titan's body jolted in rhythm with every rut of the dirt road, but his eyes stayed on me, steady, defiant, alive. For the first time that morning, I believed we both might make it. The veterinary hospital smelled of antiseptic and tension. Titan lay sedated, tubes running from his side like tangled vines. Doc Harris scrubbed his hands, jaw tight. He's lucky that bullet missed bone. 48 hours will tell us everything. 48 hours. I'd never realized how long that could feel. I sat beside the pen that entire night, clock ticking loud enough to drive me crazy. Outside, rain whispered against tin roofing, as if the sky itself was whispering prayers. My phone buzzed every few minutes, texts from neighbors, voicemails from reporters already sniffing rumors. Somehow the story had gotten out before Titan's anesthesia had even worn off. Joe called after midnight. Karen's already spinning it, he said. Claims your bull charged the hunters. Says she saved folks from a dangerous animal. I felt heat surge up my neck. Bull charged. The only thing Titan ever charged was breakfast. But I held my tongue. Words, once loosed, can't be called back. Instead, I opened the ranch's old laptop and pulled up my trail cam feeds. Cameras hidden in fence posts, gate rails, trees, eyes that never blinked. I scrubbed through hours of footage, fatigue clawing at me, until I saw it, Karen herself, the day before, meeting those same hunters near the service road. Clipboard under one arm, pointing right at my fields. There it was, the smoking gun, caught in pixels. Proof Karen wasn't just meddling, she had orchestrated the entire thing. I copied every file twice. By dawn, Doc Harris stepped out of the stall, wiping sweat from his forehead. "He's holding on," he said quietly. "Tough beast you've got." I looked at Titan, still, breathing slow, but alive. "He's family," I murmured. Just then a news alert pinged across my screen. Local HOA leader claims attack by aggressive ranch bull. Karen's lies were already headline material. I exhaled hard, determination burning the exhaustion away. She wanted a public battle, fine. But I'd come armed with truth, patience, and every inch of stubbornness this land had given me. By sunrise, caffeine replaced blood in my veins. The plan taking shape in my mind was simple: facts, witnesses, and patience. Truth always rides slower but hits harder. First step, Joe. He'd heard Karen bragging at that HOA meeting, and he didn't scare easy. When I knocked on his porch, he was already sipping coffee. "So?" he asked, raising a brow. "She forged permission slips, Joe. I have footage." He nodded, chewing that over. "You get the sheriff another copy?" "That's my next stop." We drove into town, his old truck rumbling like it disapproved of everyone we passed. At the sheriff's office, Danvers watched the clips on my phone, one big calloused finger rewinding the part where Karen laughed and pointed toward my land. When the video ended, he let out a low whistle. "You've got her cold, son. Forgery, conspiracy, animal cruelty, the DA's gonna dine on this." Still, I wasn't smiling. Karen wasn't the give-up kind. She'd twist, stall, and reshape herself until someone nailed her down. So I made another promise, to Titan, to my family name. I'd not only make her answer to the law but expose her pattern of bullying once and for all. On the drive back, Joe muttered, "Reckon you'll need a civil suit too. Hit her where it hurts." He wasn't wrong. Criminal charges might punish, civil ones would educate. That evening, I filed everything, including aerial maps, vet bills, and video, into labeled folders. Paperwork wasn't glamorous, but revenge backed by documentation is the kind that sticks. Before bed, I checked in on Titan through the hospital's camera feed. He was standing now, leaning slightly, but upright. Stronger. "You keep fighting," I whispered at the screen. We both got work left. Beyond the stable door, the town lights shimmered against low clouds. Somewhere, Karen was probably writing another press release, trying to spin guilt into virtue. But I was past fear. Truth doesn't need theatrics, it just waits for its day in court. And mine was coming soon. A week later, Karen decided to hold her own performance at the HOA clubhouse. Flyers called it a community truth forum, which sounded noble until you saw who printed them. I went, of course. So did Joe and half the neighborhood. Some came for gossip, others for justice. Karen arrived immaculate as ever, powder blue dress, pearls, grin so tight it could have cracked marble. "Friends," she began, voice trembling at all the right places, "there's been a terrible misunderstanding." She spoke of safety, of community pride, of her supposed fear that feral animals roamed unchecked. Not once did she say the word forgery. Then came the props, fake letters from concerned neighbors, praising her bravery. I recognized the handwriting instantly. She hadn't even bothered to change the loops on her Ys. When she finally opened the floor for questions, Joe's gravelly voice cut through the saccharine fog. "Ma'am, how does sending armed strangers onto someone else's property count as community outreach?" The room murmured. Karen's smile twitched. "I delegated based on incomplete information." Another neighbor chimed in, "Incomplete enough to counterfeit permission forms?" Karen's facade cracked just enough for me to see panic flicker. That's when I stepped forward. Calm. Controlled. Flash drive in my hand like a playing card. I've got footage, I said evenly, that answers every question here. Full audio, timestamps, everything. Anyone interested's welcome to watch. Her eyes widened just a fraction, like a thief hearing the snap of handcuffs in her dreams. I didn't linger. I turned and walked out, the crowd buzzing behind me. By the time I reached the parking lot, voices were rising inside the clubhouse: anger, disbelief, betrayal. Karen's kingdom was crumbling piece by piece. Back home, I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Turner. File the civil suit, I told her. Damages, vet bills, emotional distress, all of it. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. Gladly. Vindication wasn't joy, it was purpose. And purpose was exactly what this fight needed. Days blurred together, each one spelled out in feedings, medications, and updates from Doc Harris. He's stubborn, the doctor said more than once. In a good way. Every visit, Titan greeted me with a faint huff, sometimes lifting his head, sometimes just eyes half open but aware. I brushed his neck gently, feeling the heat of life under my palm. We're getting there, buddy. Slowly, color returned to his gums, strength to his stance. The day he pushed himself to his feet without wobbling, Doc actually smiled. Told you, heart of a champion. I couldn't help laughing through the exhaustion. For the first time since that morning, hope felt heavier than grief. Meanwhile, word about Karen spread faster than wildfire in summer grass. The hunters, embarrassed and broke, had pleaded out for trespass. Local news peeled back her story until there wasn't enough left to cover a headline. Neighbors began stopping by, some bearing pie, others apology. We should have called her out years ago, one woman admitted. She scared folks into silence. Well, I said, fear ain't how a community should run. That's when Joe suggested something unexpected. Let's hold a real community meeting. Neutral ground. Show folks there's better ways. We booked the Grange Hall, put up plain flyers, no drama, no shouting, just truth. By evening, the place was packed wall to wall. As I looked out at all those faces, I realized how much damage one person's arrogance had caused, and how much unity her downfall had sparked. Karen showed up late again, red jacket blazing like a warning flare. Perfect. When the lights dimmed and the footage rolled, the clip of her giving those hunters my map, silence cut through the hall so sharp you could have heard a fly land. People gasped, cursed, some shaking their heads in disbelief. When lights came back on, Karen stood trembling, words tripping over each other as she claimed deepfakes and editing tricks. But nobody believed her anymore. Justice wasn't a sheriff's badge or a gavel that night, it was 100 pairs of eyes finally seeing the truth. After that meeting, something powerful shifted. Folks who'd been frightened now stood taller. Phone calls rolled in, people volunteering for community repairs, cleanup projects, anything positive to replace the poison Karen had spread. So we went to work. We patched trails, fixed swings, replanted the old flower beds around the park sign. Kids laughed again where there'd once been shouting over grass-length violations. Reporters came too, cameras flashing as neighbors painted fences together. One asked me, why do this now? I said, because good roots grow back fast once you pull the weeds. Karen hated every second of it. I heard through Joe that she was still trying to claw her way back, filing counterclaims and tear-soaked statements. None stuck, every lie collapsed under paper evidence and witness names. The civil lawsuit moved swiftly. Turner handled it with surgical precision, stacking proofs until Karen's lawyer ran out of objections. Discovery turned up even more, past fines she'd cooked, altered HOA minutes, personal vendettas disguised as regulations. At night, after long days rebuilding both land and spirit, I'd sit by Titan's stall. He was home now, still sore, but steady. Each breath of his felt like thunder under skin. "You did good," I'd tell him, scratching between his horns. "We both did." He'd breathe out, slow and heavy, like he understood every word. Sometimes revenge whispers, sometimes it heals by example. Building that garden, repainting that playground, it wasn't about pride anymore. It was about reclaiming what one bully had tried to steal, our sense of belonging. Sheriff Danvers stopped by once, hands in pockets, eyes sweeping the bright new swing set. "Looks different around here," he said. "Feels different too," I replied. Karen might still have money and lawyers, but what she'd lost, the people's trust, no sum could buy back. The court would settle fines eventually, reputation was already serving sentence. For me, peace was starting to take root again, right here, beneath open skies and honest work. When the courthouse date arrived, you could sense tension in the air like rain before a storm. Parking lot full. Cameras ready. I parked my old pickup between two shiny sedans, dust-coating chrome with poetic justice. Inside, Karen sat stiff at the defendant's table, hair immaculate, smile brittle. Her lawyer looked overpaid and under-optimistic. Across the aisle, Turner stacked files like ammunition. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with silver hair, commanded silence faster than a bullwhip crack. Testimony began. First up, Deputy Miller, describing the fake permit, the rifles, the scene. Then Doc Harris explaining the trauma Titan endured and the cost of treatment. Finally, the footage rolled, projected large enough for everyone to see. Karen, clipboard, map, laughter. The same video that had silenced the Grange Hall now echoed through that courtroom. Her lawyer objected, of course, claiming defamation, misinterpretation, moon phases, anything. The judge shut him down after the third outburst. "Counsel, this is evidence, not theater." By mid-afternoon, Karen's confidence had sunk lower than fence posts in February mud. Her turn came to testify. She stood, voice wobbling. She talked about protecting children, about community fears. She even dabbed tears onto a tissue she'd clearly pre-sprayed with water. The judge simply raised an eyebrow. "You authorized armed strangers onto private land, correct?" Karen stammered. "I may have misunderstood boundaries." "Boundaries," the judge repeated, tapping her pen. A fitting word. When verdict time came, every heartbeat in that room froze. On counts of forgery, criminal trespass, and reckless endangerment, the judge said, voice steady as stone, "The court finds the defendant guilty." A collective gasp coursed through the benches. My fists unclenched for the first time in months. The sentencing followed fast: fines, restitution for damages, 6 months probation, community service at the county animal shelter, and 10-year ban from any leadership positions. Turner leaned toward me, whispering, "That's checkmate." Karen's face collapsed into disbelief, the strength drained from her shoulders. The gavel struck, echoing all the way back to every sunrise Titan and I had shared. Outside the courthouse, microphones swarmed like bees around spilled sugar. "Sir, how does it feel to win?" someone shouted. I kept it short. "It's not about winning, it's about doing right by the land." They pressed closer, flashes popped. Somewhere behind them, Karen darted out a side door, shielding her face with that same clipboard that had started the chaos. I didn't chase dignity that day, I let truth speak for itself. By the evening, headlines painted the town's digital sky. Justice for Titan. Read one. Another declared, HOA leader found guilty in ranch scandal. Picture of Titan at the fair ribbon ceremony from years back, strong, proud, whole. Seeing his image beside Justice made my throat tighten in quiet pride. Back home, neighbors filled the yard like family at harvest. Somebody brought lemon pie. Kids fed Titan apple slices under careful eyes. Laughter mingled with relief, the kind that only comes after storms finally quit. For the first time, I let myself exhale fully. Later, as dusk painted the barn gold, I leaned against the fence, coffee in hand. Titan grazed nearby, slower than before but at peace. His scar, though small, caught the sunset light like a reminder carved in flesh, survival's emblem. Joe ambled over, chewing a blade of grass. "Reckon we can finally say she's learned her lesson?" "She'll have plenty of time to ponder while mucking kennels," I said. We both chuckled low. He grew serious then. "You did more than win a case, friend. You gave this whole community its backbone back." I didn't answer right away. Wind rattled the windmill, metal singing soft over open fields. Guess all it took was a bull that refused to give up. Titan lifted his head, as if hearing his cue, and snorted approval. Some victories roar, others breathe easy and steady, grazing under sunset skies. Karen's house went up for sale faster than spring weeds. Word was she couldn't face the whispers every time she walked into town. Real estate agents tiptoed around her property like it was cursed territory. Within weeks, a young couple bought the place, 2 kids, golden retriever, respect for fences. Watching them move in felt like the land exhaling old poison. I didn't gloat. Didn't need to. Life itself had issued the sentence long before any judge did. Still, traces of her lingered, old HOA pamphlets blowing across roads, gossip dying slow. It reminded me how long it takes for soil to heal after contamination. I poured energy instead into rebuilding what mattered. Fences fixed. Barn painted. Pastures replanted with hardy grass mixes Titan liked best. Each swing of the hammer felt like punctuation at the end of a long overdue story. Meanwhile, the local paper ran a follow-up piece titled "From Scandal to Solidarity." Reporter asked to photograph Titan again. He obliged, standing regal beside the fence like he knew exactly why she was there. Doc Harris stopped by occasionally for checkups. "He'll have a scar," he said, patting Titan's flank, "but scars tell good stories. Maybe that's all we ever carry, stories etched into hide and heart." With Karen gone, HOA meetings became tolerable, almost friendly. Folks proposed gardens, food drives, real improvements. We were building again instead of bickering. One evening, Joe raised a toast at the diner. To the bull that taught the county what boundaries really mean. Glasses clinked, laughter rolled easy. Outside, stars hung low and bright. And somewhere among them, I imagined every ancestor who'd tilled this dirt smiling back down, because their ranch, our legacy, had survived ignorance once again. Months passed. Healing turned into momentum. County fair season loomed, the same fair Titan had once dominated, ribbons gleaming on his halter. Doc cleared him for light work, and just like that, an idea sparked. Maybe returning there wasn't about trophies, it was about closure. Every morning, I brushed Titan's coat until it gleamed like oil slick under sun. Muscle by muscle, he filled out again, strength flowed where pain had once been. Neighbors dropped by, offering help, polishing gear, patching the trailer. Even the local feed store owner donated premium hay, for the county's most famous bull, she said with a wink. Fair morning dawned crisp, air tasting of dew and promise. Titan loaded onto the trailer smoothly, snorting once, as if to say, "Let's finish what we started." At the fairgrounds, noise hit us in waves, kids laughing, engines humming, vendors hawking pie. Titan moved through all of it calm, noble, unshaken. People pointed and whispered, "That's him. The one from the news." I kept my focus. Brushed, watered, waited. When our number was called, I led Titan into the ring. The announcer's voice echoed. Judges circled, inspecting posture, sheen, temperament. Titan stood perfection, scar visible yet proud, proof that even wounded strength shines brightest. When results came, I barely breathed. Grand champion, the speaker declared. Crowd erupted, applause, cheers, even a few teary congratulations. Titan tossed his head, letting out a thunderlow bellow that rolled clear across the fairgrounds. Cameras flashed again, but this time they captured triumph, not scandal. I accepted the ribbon, shaking hands, heart light. He earned this one twice, I told the judge. And Titan, posing for photos with kids petting his flank, looked every bit the symbol of endurance our town had needed. By evening, news outlets picked up the story again, only now, the headlines sang. From victim to victor, Titan takes grand champion. Scrolling through those articles felt surreal, same bull, same ranch, entirely new energy. Even better, the coverage focused on rebuilding, forgiveness, resilience. Not revenge. A reporter cornered me near the livestock pens. Mind a few quotes. Shoot, I said, grinning before realizing my word choice. We both laughed awkwardly. He asked how it felt winning after all that chaos. I shrugged. Feels like we finally balanced the scales. Later, as crowds thinned, I led Titan toward the truck. Sunset bathed the fairground in amber. Families packed up prizes and memories. I caught Joey, the feed store clerk's kid, running up with a ribbon stub. Mister, can I keep this? It's from the champion bull. I nodded, and his grin could have powered the Ferris wheel. Small moments, that's where healing hides. Driving home, roadside fields shimmered golden. Radio hosts debated weather, my thoughts drifted to quiet things, Monday chores, fresh hay, morning dew. Normal life. I'd missed normal more than I knew. When we reached the ranch gate, fireflies blinked over tall grass. Titan stepped down with that regal patience only survivors carry. I watched him wander toward the open pasture, tail flicking lazily. Then I looked past him, at fences standing strong, barns freshly red, sky endless. The circle was complete. Not perfect, but whole. Work never stops on a ranch, but now every task hummed with renewed purpose. Mending wire, oiling hinges, stacking hay, all of it sung different when peace settled on the land again. I hired a few local teens for weekend chores. Wanted them to learn not just labor but respect, the kind of respect city contracts can't teach. They listened wide-eyed to Titan's story while brushing him down. One asked, "Was you ever scared you'd lose him?" Every minute, I admitted. But faith's just courage that keeps breathing. We marked the pasture edge with new signs, bold red and spotless, practical monuments to lessons learned. Sometimes I'd still catch myself expecting Karen's SUV to appear at the gate, then chuckle when instead, only cicadas buzzed. Ghosts fade quieter than rumors. Joe and I started a small Saturday tradition, coffee on my porch, sunrise over dewy grass, silence companionable enough to count as prayer. He once mused, funny how one bad storm makes everything grow greener. Yeah, I said, watching Titan graze by the fence, healthy and massive once more. Reckon that's nature's apology letter. The community garden bloomed wildly, peppers, beans, flowers children planted in plastic boots. The same HOA that used to ticket people for mismatched shutters now sponsored bake sales under new leadership. Progress happens slow until suddenly it doesn't. When autumn rolled in, Titan's coat thickened glossy black against orange leaves. Every breath he blew misted like smoke from a forge, pure strength. Standing there, coffee warming my hands, I realized healing isn't some destination. It's just waking up each day still willing to build, to forgive, to protect what's good. And on that ranch, my family's, Titan's, mine, that was enough. One chilly night, I lit a bonfire out back. Stars glittered like thrown sand above, wind whistling through cedars. I sat there with a blanket, mug of cocoa, and thoughts finally slow enough to savor. The glow caught on Titan's scar as he grazed nearby, turning it copper. Battle mark, blessing, same thing, depending how you see it. I thought of everything we'd survived, betrayal, grief, exhaustion, courtroom lights. The longer I stared into those flames, the clearer the truth burned. Strength doesn't mean not breaking, it means learning how to rebuild in plain sight of the cracks. Karen's name popped up one last time online that week. Former HOA president begins community service. Photos showed her in a shelter uniform, hair tied back, washing kennels under supervision. I didn't feel glee, only closure. Maybe she'd finally learn compassion from those animals, the same lesson Titan taught me for years. Joe wandered over carrying 2 enamel mugs. Bonfire therapy, huh? Better than any courtroom, I said. We sat a long while, embers popping, coyotes calling faint in the hills. You ever think you'd end up here? He asked. Not once. But if the road had to be this rough to remind us who we are, then maybe it was worth it. He nodded, staring into sparks. Ain't that the truth? When he left, I stayed until only coals glowed red. Then I looked out at Titan one last time before heading inside. He lifted his head, snorted softly, a goodnight sound older than language. I smiled. Chaos had come and gone. But the land, the bond, and the peace, they'd all endured. Winter crept in crisp and silent. Frost painted the fences each morning, sunlight turning fields into glass. Work slowed but never stopped. The younger ranch hands I'd hired kept asking for stories, how the ranch started, how Titan got his name. I told them about my grandfather, who said every creature deserves respect earned, not demanded. Titan had lived that creed. We hung his fair ribbon in the barn, framed beside a photo from years back, me as a boy beside a calf barely standing. That calf became the legend who united a town. Sometimes visitors still stopped at the gate, just to see the famous bull. I didn't charge, didn't gatekeep. I let them feed him carrots, told them his tale, the truth version, minus the scandal seasoning. Because stories heal communities better than verdicts ever could. Letters trickled in from other ranchers too, folks who'd dealt with their own Karens, thanking me for standing firm. I wrote back each time, saying the same thing, protect your ground, but never lose your grace. That winter, Titan fathered 2 calves, strong, dark, calm-eyed like him. Watching them stumble through snow felt like watching the next chapter write itself. Sometimes, late at night, I'd step onto the porch and watch northern lights flicker faint above the hills. The world's full of noise, but out here, peace speaks louder. Karen had moved states away by then, rumors said she'd taken up pottery. Maybe kneading clay taught her something fences couldn't. Me? I just kept tending soil, fixing barns, living honest. The land asked nothing more, nothing less. A year later, fair season returned. This time, the 2 young calves went with us, one named Hope, the other Justice. Couldn't resist the symbolism. The fairgrounds bustled bigger than ever, laughter echoing, sunshine ripe. Titan walked beside them like a proud patriarch. Folks cheered when we entered, kids waving hand-drawn signs. Hope snagged second place, Justice won best in breed. But the loudest applause still came when Titan stepped out for exhibition, no competition, just celebration. His slow majestic stride said everything words couldn't. Afterward, a local schoolteacher asked if her students could tour the ranch for a community values project. I agreed before she finished the sentence. Next week, busloads of bright eyes filled my barn, listening wide-eyed as I told the story not with bitterness but with pride in what grew from it. Remember, I told them, rules matter, but respect matters more. And nobody, not even an HOA, outranks integrity. They nodded solemnly, and part of me hoped those words would root somewhere deep. That evening, reporters snapped one last photo, me, Titan, and the calves framed against sunset. The caption later read, "Stronger together." Driving home, I realized the story had outgrown anger and turned into legacy, a cautionary tale that also glowed with resilience. I parked under the old oak, moonlight silvering Titan's horns. "Guess we did all right," I told him. He snorted softly, tail flicking, a subtle approval signed by fate itself. The seasons turned full circle again. Grass tall, barns sturdy, peace woven into every creak of the windmill. Evenings found me on the porch, coffee steaming, watching Titan graze under a just-setting sun. His calves bounded nearby, chasing shadows. Everything was ordinary again, and that was extraordinary. I sometimes replayed the old fear in my head, the sound of that gunshot-piercing dawn. Not to nurse anger, but to remember how fast life can test you, and how faith, friendship, and sheer grit can set it right again. Joe still stopped by Fridays, same jokes, same comfort. The community garden yielded record harvests. The HOA, now led by decent folks, hosted barbecues instead of battles. Children swung higher than the fences Karen once obsessed over. One quiet evening, Titan wandered close to the porch and rested his massive head against the rail. I reached out, scratched behind his ear, whispering, "We did it, old friend. We kept our land, our name, our peace." He blinked slow, calm, and I swear it looked like gratitude. As day folded into dusk, stars blinked awake, familiar as promises kept. No villains, no headlines, no shouting, just the steady hum of crickets and the deep contentment of survival. This was home. Always had been. Always would be.